Well, hello again, and welcome to Saturday training. Of course, it's only Saturday training if you're watching this on Saturday, so if you happen to be watching it on a Wednesday morning, then welcome to Wednesday morning training. These classes will be up on YouTube for quite some time, and I have a purpose in that because I'm assuming that some of you are going to become RVPs one day. And when you become an RVP, you have a choice. You can either come up with all of your own training classes, or you can use some of these. I personally, as I've told you before, I took a lot of notes. I have thousands of pages of notes from Mr. Hartman over the years, things that he taught us about leadership, things that he taught us about building, and all of the classes that he provided about securities and insurance and replacements and all sorts of things. I took a lot of notes, and so I didn't have to create anything. I was able to use other people's people. One of the principles that Doug taught me, using other people's people. Now, you know that when you invest, you've probably heard of OPM, using other people's money. And you do that, for example, when you invest in real estate. Anybody who owns a home is using the bank's money to buy their home. They may not, maybe they don't have the money, especially if you're in Southern California and the house you want to buy is worth $850,000. Most people don't have that in cash, so they get a trust deed. Here in California, that's what they call mortgages. And so now you owe the bank the $800,000, and you're using their money, but you're still living in the house. Well, that's how you leverage your investment. You don't have to use your own money until you start paying it. And then, of course, if you invest in real estate and you rent to other people, then when they pay their rent, they're paying your mortgage, and none of your own money comes out of your pocket, except for Uncle Sam when you get hit with capital gains taxes. But don't worry, the bigger your taxes, the more money you earned. So, boo-hoo. But I had an investment client some years ago who called me up, and she said, "Dave, I just got this big tax bill from the IRS for the investment you set me up in." And I said, "Well, you're welcome. Because when you get a big tax bill, that means I did a good job and I earned you a lot of money." Well, my heart bleeds for you now, because now you have to pay your taxes, but oh well, you could have gone to the bank and then you wouldn't have to pay much taxes at all because you wouldn't have earned any money. Now, today, I want to talk about using your own money for an investment. But the bottom line to what I've just told you is OPM, using other people's money. In Primerica, you use OPP. You use other people's money. I'm sorry, you use other people's people. People doesn't start with an M. You use other people's people. You use me to train your people. You use Doug to train your people. You use Glenn Williams at home office to train your people. And you, when you can come back into the office again, at the time we're making this, we're all kind of segregated into our own little canisters waiting for the coronavirus to be over. But once you go back into the office, you can use everybody in that office to learn more and more. I'm still doing that. And so using other people's people is a much more efficient way to train your organization. So hopefully these videos will be something that you can use in the future. But as I said, I want to talk about something that you can't use leverage. You can't use other people's money. You have to use your own. And that's for retirement. To put away money for retirement, you have, if you do it in a retirement plan, a so-called qualified plan, you have to use your own money. It has to be money that you have earned. Let me give you a little example, and I hope that you use this example with people as you teach them on investments. let's suppose that you go and you buy a car. You buy a cheap little car. You buy a Volkswagen Bug, and you like driving around in your Bug because you just like to hear, you know, and you're enjoying your Volkswagen. Now, if you own a Volkswagen Bug, sorry about the impending insult, but I'm an equal opportunity offender, so you know. But you're driving around in your Volkswagen Bug, and you drive it home, and you park it in front of your house. Well, with it parked out in front of your house, if it rains, it's going to rain all over your Bug. Okay. Now, you could bring your Bug home, and you could park it in the garage. And if you park it in the garage, when it rains, it's not going to rain on your Volkswagen Bug. And so your Bug is sheltered from the rain. The same thing is true with investments. You can go get a Volkswagen. Let's finish that part of the analogy. You could go out and buy a really nice car. Okay, you could go buy a Ferrari. You buy your Ferrari, and you bring it home. You park it in front of your house, and it's going to rain all over your Ferrari. But if you park your Ferrari in the garage, then when it rains, it's not going to rain on your Ferrari. Everybody have that image? Volkswagen Bug outside, rains on your Bug. Inside the shelter, the rain misses your Bug. Bring home a Ferrari, it rains on your Ferrari, park it in the shelter, it doesn't rain on your Ferrari. You can do the same thing with an investment. You can go get a Volkswagen Bug of an investment. You do that at the bank. The bank has lots of Volkswagen Bug investments. Most of them are called CDs. Certificates of depreciation, certificates of deposit, whatever you want to call them. Okay, legal name is a certificate of deposit. You put your money into a CD, it's locked up for a period of time. If you take it out before the lock clears, then you have to pay substantial penalty for early withdrawal. I actually think the substantial penalty is for early deposit. But, you know, opinions aside, you put your money into a CD, and if you bring your CD home, you could park it outside the shelter, but then Uncle Sam is going to tax all over your CD. If you park your CD inside the shelter, which is an IRA, then when it comes time, Uncle Sam's not going to tax on your CD. Or you could go get a Cadillac Escalade. You go get yourself a really nice car, actually a Ferrari. Let's keep it with a Ferrari, okay? So you go and you steal a Ferrari, and then you bring the Ferrari of investments now, for most people, in my opinion, is a mutual fund. So you got one, it's suitable for you, it's, you know, it meets your risk tolerance, and it meets your objectives. It's a great investment. I love mutual funds. I have money in mutual funds. And you bring home your mutual fund. If you park it outside of a shelter, then Uncle Sam's going to tax all over your mutual fund. But if you park the mutual fund inside the shelter, inside an IRA, then when Uncle Sam comes, where is that thing? He's going to find out that it's parked in a shelter, and he's not going to tax all over it. Now, that's an example that you can use to train your people, because your people, once they're securities licensed, they're going to hear somebody say, well, Bill, what's the rate of return? What's the interest rate on your IRAs? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that question over the years. Every single time I have pretended or I've reacted as if it were the first time I ever heard that question, because you don't want your prospective client to feel like an idiot. And so you say, that's a great question. Let me answer it for you. Investments have a rate of return. Shelters do not. The IRA is a shelter. It's a checkbox. It's a deal between you and Uncle Sam that says, "Dear Sam, keep your cotton picking hands off my money for tax purposes. This is a retirement plan." Okay? So an IRA is a shelter. It's the purpose of it is to help you save money on taxes. So shelters don't have a rate of return. I have a garage at home in front of my house. It doesn't do anything. It just sits there. Well, the same thing is true with an IRA. An IRA doesn't do anything. It just shelters your investment from Uncle Sam when it comes time for taxes. Okay? And we're going to make that a little more precise in a few moments. So, in the vehicle performs. Just like a car. A car performs, a garage does not. An investment vehicle, whether it's a mutual fund or a CD or anything in between, those perform. The IRA, the 401k, the 403b, the tax shelter does not perform. It just shelters. Okay? Now, let's talk specifically about the IRAs. IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. An individual retirement account is just a deal between you and Uncle Sam that he's going to give you a tax benefit for having it. But there are two kinds. There are traditional IRAs and there are Roth IRAs. Which one should you concentrate on? And the best advice that I can give you is advice from Jesus himself, who said, "This you ought to have done and not left the other undone." Do both of them, because the traditional IRA is going to make you a lot of money when somebody loses his job from his company. He had a 401k or a 403b, he had some retirement plan with his company, and now he wants to take back control of that IRA. He wants to control. He doesn't want that company to keep controlling it if he's gone from the company. He wants to take control of that money. By the way, it works for women too. She wants to take care of that, or take control of that money. Okay? So the only way they can do that is to roll that money over into an IRA. Because an IRA is what's called a qualified plan. Just like a 401k or a 403b is a qualified plan, an IRA is a qualified plan, which means it is qualified with Uncle Sam to give you tax benefits. Okay? So, you've got a 401k, you haven't paid any taxes, your client has a 401k, hadn't paid any taxes on it because they've been putting the money in before tax. So it's not been taxed. If they take the money out, they're going to be taxed on everything. That's huge. Suppose the thing built up to $500,000. Want to pay taxes on $500,000 and keep the other $300,000? That's a disaster. So what you do is, you as a securities licensed professional with Primerica, you help them roll that money over, and it has to go into a traditional IRA, and you get paid on the $500,000. That's not too shabby. So you will make a lot of money up front from rolling over people's accounts into the traditional IRA. But you will also make a lot of money long term from having set up people's retirement accounts where they just contributed, $200 a month, almost $600 a month now, $7,000 a year they can put into either IRA, and so they keep putting that money in, and as the money grows, you make a little bit of money every time they contribute. Okay, they put in their $200 and you make $1.66. That's not terribly exciting. But over time, you've got dozens of clients, then hundreds of clients, and then thousands of clients as I have had. And now you start to collect what are called 12B1 fees. Your retirement account in Primerica is not a Roth IRA. It's not a 457 or a 403B or a 401k. Your retirement plan is 12B1. Those are the fees that you get paid a little percentage of based on how much money, the total amount of money in your client's accounts. Now suppose that all of your clients have an average of, say, $10,000 in their account, okay? But you have 50 clients. Now there's $500,000 sitting in your assets under management. You're going to make a little percentage of that. But then you have 100 clients, and so you have $1 million assets under management. Or as Meredith and I have millions of dollars under management. You get a little percentage of that. That's an amazing retirement plan for you, the Primerican. And now you are using other people's money. That's how you can leverage, because you get paid a percentage of what's in their account. Now, what happens to make those accounts grow? Well, Dave, what if they stop investing? Then it doesn't grow. If it doesn't grow, you messed up when you set up their investment. Because suppose that their average rate of return is 9%. At 9%, you know the rule of 72. 72 divided by 9 is 8. So every 8 years, that money doubles. So if somebody's got $80,000 that you just rolled over from his 401k at Boeing, then in 8 years, even if he never adds another penny of investments, in 8 years that investment would be $160,000 if it earned 9%. And then 8 years later, it'd be $320,000, and then $640,000, and then almost $1.3 million. It just keeps growing and growing as the market grows. And the market over time has always, did I say always? Always grown. Always gets bigger. And so you get a percentage of those growing accounts, whether the client is investing new money or not. So what's the difference? Suppose that a person wants to, now if they want to do a rollover, like I said, it has to be a traditional IRA. But suppose that they just want to invest. I want to start a retirement plan. What should I do? In most cases, it's better to have a Roth IRA than to have a traditional IRA. And I'll tell you why. The traditional IRA, for people who, for most people who are working, now to have any kind of an IRA, you have to have earned income. So you can't have all of your income coming in from disability or Social Security or investments that you've made. Those don't count. You can't invest that money into an IRA. But if you have earned income, even if you're a child and you mow lawns on Saturdays for a living, that child can put all the money into an IRA starting at whatever age they are. Now, I don't recommend having your 3-year-old out to, funding your retirement account, but they can put it into their own. And if you have earned income, you can invest all of your income up to $7,000 a year starting in 2020. You can do that. You can invest your entire income up to $7,000. $7,000 is the cap of what you can invest into an IRA, whether it's traditional or Roth. But what's the benefit of the Roth IRA? The traditional IRA for most people is pre-tax dollars, which means you put the money into that IRA, they don't have to pay taxes on the money that they put in. You can actually write it off on your income taxes. And as it grows, it's tax deferred. And when you get ready to take the money out, Uncle Sam says, time to pay your taxes. You haven't been paying taxes on it up to now. You got to pay it. Now, would you rather pay taxes on $200 a month, or would you rather pay taxes on the $1.5 million that this thing grows to at retirement? I'd rather pay taxes on the little bitty amount up front and then never have to worry about it, right? Now, the traditional IRA, you have to pay taxes at the end when it's big. The Roth IRA is different. You don't get a tax break when you put the money into the account. It's not pre-tax dollars, it's post-tax dollars, which means you've paid your income taxes and you put the money into a Roth IRA. But as long as you keep that money in there for a while, and the while is only 5 years, you keep that money in there for 5 years or more, once you get to the age of retirement, which needs to be at least 59 and a half, you can take that money out tax-free. Now, if you heard the difference of what I said, it's deferred from income taxes over the years, but when you take the money out for retirement after age 59 and a half, totally tax-free. You know what $1.5 million is that's tax-free after taxes? It's $1.5 million. You want to be able to get that money without Uncle Sam finding it first, okay? So for most people, the Roth IRA is the best way to do it. The main exception is if they need a tax break now because they're in a too high a tax bracket, then, you know, the traditional IRA suits that purpose, and that's fine. But for most people, as I said, the Roth IRA, you can't put money into an IRA, into a Roth IRA, if you make too much money. Now, what's too much money? That changes every year. Then those limits go up. You can have 2 IRAs. Remember that there are no joint IRAs. I want an IRA for me and my wife. Well, it's got to be an IRA for you and an IRA for your wife, because the I in IRA is individual. Okay, so that's how those work. Let me change topics a little bit, because last time we began teaching how to handle objections. Now, you remember from last time, objections can actually be your best friend. If you go out on an appointment, you do a presentation for somebody, you go through the FNA questionnaire, you fill out the questions in the FNA, you take it back to your office, you do a very careful job of making sure the FNA looks good, and then using that information from their financial needs analysis, you do an action sheet, a summary sheet. And that's one sheet of paper, one side that tells them, okay, here's what you need to do, John and Mary. And it shows what to, and you've done all that work, and you go back into their house, and the client's sitting there like this. And you do your very best job of presenting that. And you get to the end and say, now, John and Mary, which of these plans makes the most sense to you? And John says, none of them. Thanks for coming. We're going to watch a football game now. And Mary's going to fix the iced tea and chips. Okay? Which wouldn't want to be part of that household, but that's not a good appointment. Or it could be the opposite extreme. You could go in, you could do your best presentation, and they're both all wide-eyed and everything. Hey, great, all right, great, super duper, great, super. And then you say, well, which of these 3 plans makes the most sense to you? And they'll say, you know, man, you've given me a lot of great stuff to think about, so we want to think about it. Well, you've got to be able to handle that, because at least if the person says something, you have something that you can deal with. You have something you can handle. If they say nothing, they just sit there like Chingachgook. You have no way of telling what they're thinking. But if they tell you what they're thinking, you have a way of dealing with it. For example, we want to think about it. Now, suppose that you are proposing the life insurance to them, okay? Now, let me tell you, when do I offer people securities? If it's a married couple, they've got children living at home, and they want to buy securities from me, meaning a retirement plan, a mutual fund account, an annuity, something like, they want to buy something like that from me, I check to make sure what kind of insurance that they have. And I already, of course, knew that from the first appointment, because we have a 2-appointment system. If you close an insurance sale on a first appointment, it better be an extreme exception. Otherwise, I won't take it. Because if you have, if you want to have the right to deal with people and to earn money from people, you need to give them something of value. You need to give them that financial needs analysis. You need to have worked on it. I don't want anybody to just go for the jugular vein. That business is not going to stay on the books. That's going to hurt us all in the future. But if you earn your money, if you give them value, you do the financial needs analysis, you do the summary sheet, you give them good sound advice, then you've earned the right to make money from that transaction. So I already know whether they have insurance. If they had insurance already, I picked it up on the first appointment, took it to my office, analyzed it completely on the computer. I can show you how to do that if you don't know how to do that. And then I came back and I presented an insurance proposal. And do you think in the last 35 years I've ever had anybody say, well, you know, Dave, we don't really need insurance. We just want investments for retirement. You know what my answer is? I can't do that. I'm sorry, John. And by the way, that always comes from the husband. Wives always believe in life insurance. Okay. But the husband's, yeah, we don't need insurance. I just want the investment. Talk to us about the IRAs. Now, I'll say, John, now I don't just say no. You know, I tell him, well, John, here's why I can't do that. Let's suppose that you start putting $200 a month into your IRA, and then 3 months later, you just happen to step off the curb, and here comes a bus, and the bus doesn't say Anaheim on it, the bus says John on it. And that bus picks you off, and John gets to go home and live with the Lord now. Now, Mary, are you pretty comfortable saying that your financial situation would not change at all if John were gone? And I'm looking only at Mary at that time. And Mary will start to laugh. She says, well, yeah, he makes more money than I do. That's just often, sadly, that's often the case. But John makes a substantial amount of money for the family. Yeah, my finances have changed drastically. I say, well then, John, that's why I can't sell you a retirement plan without the insurance, because if you step off that curb 3 months after you start putting in $200 a month, I can either come back to Mary and say, well, Mary, here's your $619 from John's retirement plan, or I can say, here's your $500,000 from John's insurance plan. Which of those sentences do you think I would rather deliver as a financial advisor? I would be a moron if I said, yes, let's get the security started, and I didn't take care of the family first. Does that make sense, John and Mary? They will almost always say, yep, that makes sense. And I'll say, well, great. John and Mary, of these 3 plans, which one makes the most sense to you? And we'll do the insurance at that, okay? Now, once they have the insurance in place, or in fact, once they even apply for the insurance, if they've given me a check for the insurance and the application is filled out, then they are what is called conditionally covered, which means unless they lied on the application, if they were found acceptable by our underwriting department, the company would pay the death claim even if the policy had not been issued yet. So they're covered with that condition at the time that he hands me the check and we fill out the application. So having been conditionally covered, you can go ahead and set up the securities. And you do that. You know, if you're not real knowledgeable about securities, hopefully you're getting more knowledgeable about them as we teach these classes. But now you can set it up. But that's the way to handle that objection. Oh, we don't need insurance. We just want the investments. John, and then I'll talk to Mary and ask the questions that you just heard me ask, okay? Now, some people say, you know, Dave, I'm not a salesperson. So I listened to your Thursday night meeting. I liked it. It was exciting. I'd love to make extra money, but I'm just not a salesperson. We talked about this last time. And I'll say, well, Bill, good. Because if you were a salesperson, I'd put you on probation from the very beginning. I'm not looking for salespeople. But let me ask you this. Do you have a heart for teaching and helping people? And if he says yes, I'll say, then you really need to get involved. Let's see if you qualify to work with us. Okay? What if the guy says, well, I could never sell insurance. I mean, I cross the street to get if I know an insurance agent's coming down the street, I'll cross the street to keep from accidentally bumping into it. Maybe something will rub off, you know. That's the way most people feel about insurance agents. Years ago, if you're familiar with the Gallup polls, Gallup did a poll asking people, well, what are the vocations in America that you respect the most? Now, things may have changed by now, but at that time, the number one most respected was the clergy. Preachers, ministers, priests. The clergy was the most respected. And now, I don't know what it is now. I hate to think that it's drug dealers, but you know, then the next one down was teachers. And then doctors. And then blue-collar workers. And then lawyers. And way down at the bottom, second from the last, was life insurance agents. The only thing that was lower was, you know, used car salesman, Cal Worthington and his dog Spot, you know, but down at the bottom were used car salesmen. And believe it or not, they retook the poll later, and the insurance agents were now at the bottom. Why? Well, if you've watched the first 2 or 3 of these classes, you know why. You know that the insurance industry has earned the horrible reputation that it has. And if you're not familiar with that, go back and watch those first 3 training classes, and you'll know why. But most people could never sell. Dave, I couldn't sell insurance. And my answer to that is, Bill, do you think that's what we're about? Do you think I went to school all those years so I could be an insurance agent? I said, let me give you a little better perspective. You know why I have an insurance license? I have an insurance license for the same reason that a policeman carries a gun. Policemen don't go out to murder people. But if they find somebody who's out to murder somebody, they can pull that gun, and that's a real deterrent. That guy to keep from shooting his. Now, life insurance agents, I mean, I hate to say that they're like, you know, people going out to murder people, but if they sell the kind of products that we've talked about in past classes, then they're tattooing people right and left. And they're doing that with a legal insurance license. And so I have to have an insurance license to go out and be their deterrent. Once they've set up somebody with the wrong kind of insurance, I can go waltzing in there and say, look, how would you like to have 2 times the coverage for 1/2 the money? And they'll say yes, and then I use my insurance license. But a life insurance agent, boy, I hope you don't think that's what I am. I'm a financial advisor, and I show people how to correct the problems that they have made, the mistakes that they've made. And one of those is buying the wrong kind of life insurance. Now, well, Dave, I looked up Primerica on the internet and I found out it's a pyramid. I love that one. And I'll tell them, you know what, John? You probably mean a multi-level company, because pyramids are illegal. And we are highly regulated in the financial industry. We're regulated by FINRA, by the SEC, Department of Corporations, Department of Insurance. We're regulated by everybody but the Boy Scouts. So it can't be a pyramid in the United States. But is it a multi-level company? Well, I don't care what you read on the internet, even from our own literature. A multi-level company is a company where you buy a bunch of stuff, you store it, you sell it to your friends and neighbors at a profit, and you keep the profit. And when you recruit your friends and neighbors, they can sell it and you make an override. Now, are we a multi-level company? In the same way that a real estate company is a multi-level company. If you believe the Century 21 or ERA is a multi-level company, then so are we. Because in Century 21 or ERA or any of Tarbell or any of the other ones, there's a broker. I know this because I have a real estate broker's license. I don't use it, but I have it. There's a broker who recruits agents. And when those agents sell a house, the broker gets an override. He deserves the override. He's the one taking the risk for the office. He's the one paying the rent. He's the one paying the phone bill. He's the one paying the secretary. So he deserves that override. Are we a multi-level company? Well, we do that too. We can bring people aboard. We train them like with these training videos. And then I pay the rent. I pay the phone bill. I pay for all the administrative staff and all that kind of thing. So as a broker, which is a regional vice president in Primerica, I get that override. Well, frankly, I feel like I deserve that override because I'm the one that took the risk. I'm the one that pays the rent. My people don't pay for any supplies at all, no supplies. They waltz into my office without asking me, and they pick up whatever they need and waltz out and do business. And I pay for those supplies. Now, once they're a regional vice president, then they'll pay for their own supplies, okay? But not while I'm the RVP. Well, I learned that from Mr. Hartman. He's extremely generous with all of the people in his office. Now, does that settle the multi-level, the MLM issue? We're the same kind of multi-level marketer as Century 21 or Tarbell or ERA, any real estate company, any insurance brokerage, any securities brokerage where brokers get overrides over their agents. Okay. Now, how do you take care of the objection where people say, well, I don't want to give you my financial information? Usually that happens when one of the spouses has not told the other spouse that they have $15,000 in credit card debt. They do not want that other spouse to find out about it. And that happens. And so you just very gently prod and say, okay, well, I'll tell you what, just give me the minimum amount that it would take for me to run the financial needs analysis. Is that a deal? And say, no, I don't want to give you any financial information. And of course, when I'm on that appointment, I'm here training my new associate, Bill. You know, Bill's not saying anything. He's just training, listening and taking notes. He says, I'm sorry, but you know, Bill's my brother-in-law, and we haven't told Bill any of our finances, so we don't want to answer those questions in front of him. And I'll say, no problem, Bill. Here are the keys to my car. I want you to go sit in the car and wait for me. I'll be done in about 15 minutes. And I promise you, John and Mary, that Bill will not see this financial needs analysis, just you. And I'll make that special arrangement with him. Most of the time, people don't say that, okay? So, but what about Dave? You know, all of those three plans would make sense, but you know, even the least expensive one, that just costs a little bit too much for us. Now, what would a salesperson say at a time like this? Well, John, don't you love your wife? If you ever say that, or I ever hear of you saying something like that in front of a client, I'll fire you. I'll terminate your contract. Okay? You don't treat people that way. But what would we say if it costs too much? Say, John and Mary, today most things do. I understand. Let me ask you this. About how much too much do you feel it is? And they'll usually put a number on it. Well, this lowest one was $80 a month, and we could only afford 60. I'll say, you know what? That's great. I'll tell you what, Mary, if you'd go get me a drink of water, I'm going to do a little arithmetic here, and we'll see if we can make that happen. And so Mary goes to get a drink of water, and the whole purpose of that is so that they're not sitting there doing nothing, looking at each other. And when she goes to get me a drink of water, I'm on quick quote figuring out what it would cost for about three-fourths of the coverage. You don't have to be a heavy-duty mathematician like the fellow who's sitting here recording this is. You just have to be able to estimate. Let's say $80 a month. He wants $60 a month. Okay, so we were proposing $400,000 on him, $200,000 on her. So let's cut that down to $300,000 on him and $150,000 on her, and let's see what that costs. And you figure out the cost, and it's $61.42. And by that time, of course, your drink of water is there, and you take a swig of drink of water and say, I have great news for you, John and Mary. We were able to get that down to $61.42 for $300,000 on you, John, and $150,000, Mary, on you. Is that $61.42 acceptable? Well, he would be pretty embarrassed to say it's not, because he just told me that about $60 would be affordable. Does that make sense? So you say, great, let me ask you some questions and make sure you qualify for the program. And you start asking them questions. Okay? So that's how you handle that one. Dave, my insurance agent is a good friend of ours. I don't think I could replace his policy. What do I say? Say, well, that's understandable, Mary. Let me ask you this. Is your agent a good enough friend that he would want you to have what's the best for you? Or is he just kind of a casual friend that just wants to keep the sale? If they say, well, no, he'd want us to have the best for you, then I'll say, well, is it better to have $300,000 and $150,000 for $61 a month? Or is it better to have what you have now, which is $100,000 on one of you, nothing on the other one, for $105 a month? And as soon as they say, well, yeah, it's better to have more coverage for less money, I'll say, great. Let me ask you a few questions. Make sure you qualify for the program. Okay, does that make sense? You handle the objections, and you can become very good at it. Okay? What about, Dave, I want cash value insurance. With term insurance, that thing just blows up at the end of the term. I don't want term insurance. Say, well, now, John and Mary, it doesn't blow up at the end of the term. You can stay insured till you're 95 years of age if you want to, with no proof of insurability. But it costs more as you get older. That's true with all kinds of insurance, even though they shelter it in different ways. Okay? But remember, we don't sell term insurance instead of cash value insurance. We sell term insurance and invest the difference instead of cash value insurance. With cash value insurance, that your family gets either the insurance or the cash values. If you die and they get the insurance, the cash values stay with the company. If you take the cash values, the insurance goes poof. But with term and invest the difference, if you die, your family gets the term insurance and the investment. So you're better off whether you live too long or you die too soon. Does that make sense? And John and Mary will say, yep, that makes sense. What about on investments? Some people say, well, you know, I would love to be able to invest, but I don't want to take any risk. And I'll say, well, we know where your investments are right now, John and Mary. You've got them at the bank. If you're earning a 2% rate of return, which is a joke today because people are earning at the bank less than 1%, but let's average it out in case you're watching this in the future and the banks get guilty and, you know, get a little better heart. But if your money is at the bank, you're earning 2%. Suppose that inflation is 4%. So next year, things cost 4% more and your investments rose 2%. What happened? And the answer is you just lost 2% in purchasing power. And the purpose of money is to purchase. You don't want to go backwards in your investment. And so, John and Mary, it is impossible. I'm using the correct word. Impossible to avoid risk. But there are many different kinds of risk. And then you can educate them on the kinds of risk that we talked about in a previous class. The liquidity risk, the inflation risk, the tax risk, all of those are different risks that people have. You cannot avoid risk. But you can manage it with such things as a diversified mutual fund, asset allocation, dollar cost averaging. You can not eliminate risk, but you can ameliorate risk. You can make it more friendly, so to speak. Okay, so just educating people on what the risks are will take care of that objection. But Dave, don't mutual funds have a sales charge? And I'll say, yep. You know why they have a sales charge, John and Mary? Because people like me don't do what we do for free. But the rates of returns that I showed you, and by the way, you didn't show anybody a rate of return unless you handed them a prospectus for that fund before you mentioned the name of that fund. You don't say, oh, well, no, I'm going to mention a specific fund. This class is for training purposes only. I obviously can't hand you a prospectus through the computer, but this is for training. You can't buy anything at this appointment. Nothing's for sale here. So I'm going to mention a specific mutual fund without giving you a prospectus. Investment Company of America. Okay? You can't say, well, John and Mary, the Investment Company of America over the last 80 years has averaged 12%. Let me see if I can find a prospectus for that thing. No. If I find out you've done that, guess what I'm going to do? Good guess. Okay, so the prospectus comes before the name. You hand them the prospectus, or in today's technology, availability equals delivery. If you have made it available to them and they see it on their computer, oh yeah, Dave sent me the prospectus, then I'll talk to them about rates of return all the time. The only rate of return that you can talk about is historical, the past. You cannot say, yep, this mutual fund earns 12%. There's no such concept with mutual funds. It doesn't earn 12%. It only has or it hasn't in the past. Okay? Or this mutual fund is projected at least 9% in the future. Well, you're projected to go to prison for at least 10 years in the future. Okay? It doesn't work that way. You don't project the future. You don't talk about the present. You talk about what it has actually done, and you show them those figures in the prospectus. Is that a deal? Now, when they say, well, yeah, but that's what it did in the past, how do we know what it's going to do in the future? You know what the correct answer to that is? You don't, John, but, and I say but that quickly, and then I stop. I say, but I would rather know how a mutual fund has actually performed than to have somebody tell you, well, I think this is what it's going to do in the future. Wouldn't you? Now, isn't that a nice way to handle that objection? I'm not too bad at this, huh? You'd think I'd been doing it a long time. Mutual funds do have a sales charge, but the rates of return that I showed you were after the sales charge. And you make sure that you show them after the sales charge returns. And by the way, the 12% return that historically ICA fund has done, that's after sales charges. So I don't care if they paid 5% or 8.5% or 2% or no percent. I want to know what the return was after the percent. I want to know what the client's going to get. And honestly, I think he's going to get more money with our sales charge funds than he's going to get trying to scramble on the internet to find his own mutual fund, be his own financial planner, and hope for the best. And I will often add this. By the way, John, do you think that there was any value to the free financial needs analysis that we gave you? If you think there is, then I've earned the money that I get in that sales charge. Wouldn't you agree? And the last one. We also market annuities. We don't market them to everybody, but we do market them. There are some people for whom an annuity is perfect. People who need certain kinds of guarantees. We're going to be talking about annuities next week. But people who need certain kinds of plans, an annuity is just fine for them. Almost always, I will stop a sale with an annuity that's made an IRA. Almost always. And we'll talk about that next time. But not always. But some people say, man, well, I heard that you should avoid annuities like the plague. And I'll say, yeah, you might have heard that from me 25 years ago. But you know what's happened in the last 25 years? We had several insurance companies come to Primerica and say, hey, would you market our annuities? And our company said, nope. They'd say, why? Because you force people to annuitize those things at a certain age, and because there aren't any exceptions, blah, 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 to the surrender charge. And, well, what do you want us to do? And they did what Primerica told them what we wanted. Namely, they took away the need for annuitizing that thing at a certain age. They took away the fact that there were no exceptions to the surrender charge. Now you get an exception for, if you go into a nursing home or other kinds of things, you get exceptions for those. Why? Because Primerica said, you want us to sell your stuff? Change your stuff. We also sell managed accounts. You have to become an investment advisor to sell the managed accounts. Series 65 license. But lots of companies, when they said, oh, you've got some people getting Series 65 license, you've got some investment advisor representatives now, we'd like you to sell our managed accounts. And Primerica said, nope. So why not? Said, because you got to have $250,000 to get into your plan. And mom and pop, the people we talk to, they can't afford that kind of money. They've been saving and saving and saving and sweating for years and years, and they finally built up, $30,000 in the bank or some other place else, and they'd like to invest with the big boys in a managed account, but they can't afford your $250,000. And they said, oh, well, we'll lower it down to $25,000. Why? Because they wanted a company that is in people's homes every single night with 130,000 securities license representatives, and they wanted us to be able to sell their products, so they changed it. Well, now I don't talk against annuities anymore. I don't talk against managed accounts anymore. That's what we're about, as well as the other accounts. So we'll be talking about those things in the future. One more thing I want to talk about. Leadership. If you're going to be successful in Primerica, You have to become a leader. Now, there's an old adage, and I may have made this up, I don't know. Teachers teach. Robbers rob. But you know what leaders do? They lead. If you want your people to make money, go make money. If you want people to do what's right, you do what's right. If you want people to be successful, you go be successful. If you want people to save money, you go save money. If you want people to have a mutual fund, you get a mutual fund. And don't get it, if you have a family and you have kids, you don't get your mutual fund unless you have your insurance in place, term insurance, and then you invest it different separately. If you want people to be an example, you go be an example. You do the right thing. You go be successful. And if you want to know how to do that, we're going to teach you how to do that. These classes will help. But folks, lead by example. You want your people to be a great prospector and start building a team? Then you learn how to prospect. We're going to be talking about that next week too. You learn how to prospect. You learn how to build a big team. And your people will copy what you do before they copy what you say. And with that, God bless you. Have a great week. And we'll see you hopefully Thursday night. I look for those names. I look for your names on the Thursday night meeting to see if you're watching. So make sure that you are, and make sure you invite at least one person to watch it with you, because that person's going to end up on your team. God bless you and so long.